Welcome everyone to 8-Bit Politics, political talk with a pop culture twist. I am your host, Ryan Jarvis, and for this inaugural episode, we felt like it was probably very apropos to start today, of all days, man, November the 9th, 2016, the day that will live in infamy, or should I say the day after the day that shall live in infamy for many of my more liberal friends, to be sure. And that is because Donald Trump did something that was absolutely amazing. And to be sure, if you ever heard an analogy where a man has to climb up a hill, this ain't even something like that. Donald Trump didn't just have a hill to climb. He had to climb Mount Everest while wearing ice shoes. I mean, there was just no way around it. He had a huge, huge mountain to climb. And the reason 8-Bit Politics wanted to start with this particular subject because, quite honestly, one thing you will get from this podcast that you will not get anywhere else is the fact that we are such fans of pop culture, everything from video games to pro wrestling, you name it. Chances are you're going to get a lot of things referenced in this particular podcast. And so every week, because we're huge fans of Y2J himself, Mr. Chris Jericho, and his list, we're going to make sure that by the end of this episode, you're going to find out who we deem to be put on the list this particular week. And with that being said, without further ado, I want to talk a little bit about this particular landslide, if you will, that Trump did in terms of taking the American political system by storm. And one thing that needs to be addressed is the fact that, if you recall, it was 4 short years ago that Donald Trump had ran for office, but the Republican Party had given Mitt Romney the nod, if you will. And at that particular time, if I'm not mistaken, Donald Trump decided to run as an independent or something to that effect. Of course, it didn't pan out for him, and he backed out. And that's why there was a lot of talk about him running as a Republican in this election, because the Republican Party wanted to make sure that you're going to finish. Well, he finished all right, and he finished in a position that most people, especially my more liberal friends, would never think would be even close to being possible. But I want to go into something that I think people are missing the point here. I'm sure everybody's Facebook feed, their Twitter feed has been absolutely bananas, man. I have seen people whose literally their families have broken up over this. I have seen people who have spit constant hatred. Man, I have seen people that have even alluded to the fact, asking questions of, who do you think is going to be the next John Wilkes Booth? In other words, who do you think is going to be the guy that's going to kill Donald Trump? The idea that somebody would even put that out there is insane. And if you go to the Drudge Report, you'll even see, and it's all over the media, that there's a lot of left-wing people out there that are so irate. Of course, they're handling business the only way they know how, which is what? Burn cars, burn effigies, cause chaos. And so we know that's their MO. It just is what it is. Now, one thing that I think needs to be addressed is the fact that this is not something that just happened over the last year, folks. You know that as well as I do. For year after year, at least the past 10 or 15 years, man, you have noticed a subtle decline in America's overall, I guess you could say, likability or believability in the congressional sector of American politics. The favorable rating has dropped year after year to record low levels, to the point now when it's the lowest. Our Congress has got the lowest approval rating in history. Okay, there's never been a congressional group that has ever had a lower approval rating than what's going on right now. But this has been going back for many, many years. And to be quite honest, Donald Trump would not be where he's at right now if it wasn't for the Tea Party first and then the Occupy movement. And that's what really baffles me here. Because, and maybe you guys will agree with me, the bottom line is, everybody is sick and tired of politics as usual in Washington. We're sick and tired of career politicians, glorified oligarchs, which we're not supposed to have in politics, but yet we've gotten in American politics because of name and power and money. Because of the fact that we've allowed whoever earns the most money, whoever collects the most money at the end of that even year, chances are history shows they're going to win the election. Well, obviously that's BS, and we all know it. So the Tea Party comes out many a moon ago, followed by the Occupy movement, and the irony of it is both of them say pretty much the same thing. It's just one's the yin, one's the yang. They're the same thing, almost identical. Every single one of them, first of all, felt that these bankers and a lot of these elites were getting bailouts, but yet none of them were being held accountable. Moreover, they were also talking about, excuse me, that the people in Washington, they're just not paying attention to us. They're not listening. And so, as Trump has put it, we need to drain the swamp. Many Americans, both left and right, have been saying for a long, long time, we need a non-politician politician. We need somebody that is not in the Washington circle. We need somebody that isn't a freaking Bush, a Clinton, a Kennedy. We need somebody that will come out of the woodwork, tell it like it is, and drain the swamp. And we finally got that person. But this is what baffles me. And this is why I wanted to talk about my Thor and Loki theory, okay? For all you fanboys out there, you know who Thor and Loki is. I mean, they are iconic characters not only in the Marvel universe, but they go back in Greek, in mythology, Norse mythology. And so, but the idea of Thor and Loki being brothers, in all these Marvel movies, you see the idea that the way I look at it personally is that the left wing in American politics tend to present themselves as if they're the Thor, they're the hero, right? But in actuality, what we've seen here is this particular election is so monumental because we found out that many on the left and the right and the media, they have completely lost touch with all reality, and now they have nothing left to go back to. They have sold out compromised their principles, sold out their history, and quite honestly have lost all faith with the American public. And we've seen this before, because when President Obama ran for office, the media was all but in his back pocket. They might as well have been a part of his campaign. And they were. From Chris Matthews on MSNBC talking about how every time he heard the man speak, freaking tingles would go up his leg, or when he would talk about how he was going to do everything he could to get this man elected. Or even when it was MSNBC had Keith Olbermann on there every night bashing George Bush, you knew that 90% of the media was in the tank for Democrats and liberals. Now, that's why I fast forward to today. You will literally hear on every single network how Trump was a racist, a sexist, a misogynist, etc., etc. You heard that so much that pretty much everybody, at least on the left, had wrote off Donald Trump as just, he's basically just a sideshow. He's a circus freak. There's no way the orange-skinned guy could possibly win. But what eventually happened was because these Democrats, these liberals, these far-left lunatics, they literally came out into the fray, started throwing all kinds of aspersions out there about Trump, all the while, for example, today, Van Jones, of all people, Van Jones is essentially, he's a communist. He worked with President Obama in his cabinet during his first 4 years. Actually, it was much less than that, but right there at the beginning. And he was this green job czar. Well, this guy is a communist. And he has terrible rhetoric. He even called Republicans a-holes. I'll blank that out. But the bottom line is this guy has a lot of hateful speech, but he dresses himself up in a suit so that he can infiltrate the system. He looks professional, but yet inside he's a revolutionary. And he says vile things. And he's going to come out and talk about how Trump being in the position he's in is somehow going to be disrespectful, and that he can't believe he's going to have to tell his children, don't be like our president, don't be a bully, when this guy has made a career bullying people. As a matter of fact, our president was a community organizer. Community organizers are known from Saul Alinsky's playbook how to bully, how to get results. And so the idea that they set themselves up as Thor when really they're Loki, to me, makes no sense. But what I want to challenge everybody out there, all fans of pop culture that just happen to be wise and be encouraged in the fact that there are people out there that believe like you and I that actually do read, that do keep themselves educated, that have positions that change periodically over time, because that's a sign of increased wisdom. And when you have increased wisdom, that means occasionally your freaking opinion will change. I don't know many of my friends that I consider intelligent men or women that have not changed opinions slightly, or maybe not so slightly, over the years, because again, with new information comes new opinions. But what we have seen is Donald Trump became the person that the left and the Occupy movement and the right and the Tea Party have been looking for. But the problem is the left was so caught up in their pundits, in their celebrities, that were just throwing garbage out there and trying to make Trump look like something he wasn't. Because keep in mind, Donald Trump has been in American politics for 30 years, not politics, but in American pop culture, rather, for 30 plus years. And he was never called to this degree a racist, a sexist, any of those things to this level until he ran for a Democratic presidency or ran against a Democratic candidate. That right there shows you there's something up, you know, and the bottom line is he is the person that people have been looking for, somebody outside the Washington machine that could come in and actually begin to expose some of the corruption that was in Washington, because he doesn't need their money. He can speak and shoot from the hip regardless what anybody thinks about it. And to me, that's what we're all looking for. But here's what's eventually happened when it comes to the way this thing is played out. We literally have seen the propaganda coming from all places. You know, I'm a big gaming fan. One of my favorite franchises is BioShock. You know, and BioShock, the first game when I played it, you know, I didn't know anything about politics. I'm talking anything. You know, nothing. By the time the second game came out and I played it, I started to study history and I picked up on all of the Nazi-esque or communist-esque propaganda that's in that particular game. And so when you go into the world of nature, you know, underneath the ocean, and you begin to explore this wise, much like the mainstream media, there's a constant barrage of literature that you read or these audio logs, but in actuality, they were anything but. And so now we come to this point where that is the equivalent of what's going on in the mainstream media in American politics. And the problem is, you know, I see online all the time, all these things that are forms of entertainment. You know, ice bucket challenge here. You know, they have cinnamon challenge and all these crazy things, whisper challenge. You know, everybody does these things that to me seem so mindless. But the bottom line is I got a challenge for us, American public. How about the read a book challenge? You know, maybe that would be something that would actually engage us in a conversation. Because where we're at right now politically, it's almost like, you know, everybody looks at each other as either a Mario or a Bowser. You and your crew are Mario and Luigi. I mean, okay, like you're good, you know, but everybody else seems to be a Bowser, a Koopa, a Trooper, you know? And that's just not the way it's supposed to be, man. I don't know how I can make it any more simply than this. My perspective. You know, I would never force it on anybody, but if somebody wants to hear it, I want to be able to talk about it. I don't know anybody that doesn't want to do that with their own views, be it religion, be it politics, or I don't know anybody that doesn't want more money in their pocket. I don't know anybody that doesn't want to feel safe from terrorists. I don't know anybody who has children or plans on having children that doesn't want your children to have a better life than you. And so the idea that somebody like Donald Trump would come out and say some things that would offend somebody, you know, to me, knowing that he is the guy that we've been looking for a long time. But nobody's perfect, man. Unless you were born 2,000 years ago and hung on a cross, you're not perfect either. Nobody's perfect. But the bottom line is he was exactly what we needed, when we needed it, whether you've recognized it or not. But just, you know, we're all about nonpartisanship here. It may seem like we're partisan, but it's just because it's such a monumental event. And to be honest with you, man, this is the biggest middle finger ever given in American politics in over a century. You know, if you know anything about politics, you'll go back and realize that the first political party was the Federalists, and they believed in a strong federal government. Well, what came after that? The opposite, anti-federalists. Men like Thomas Jefferson championed the fact there should be a small central government. Well, what happened? You don't hear those party names anymore because they eventually evolved into Democrats and Whigs. And then they eventually, from that, after the Civil War, well, during the Civil War, it evolved from Democrats to Republicans. And so you always hear this idea of realignment, party realignment. And you see that today with Republican Party. They have nowhere else to go. You know, there's never been a time in American politics where more could get done in a 4-year window than right now. If I'm not mistaken, we are almost 100 years, close to 90 to 100 years since the last time we had a Republican president and a Republican Congress. That means there doesn't any more of this BS, filibust this. There's none of that that's needed anymore. Whatever needs to be done can be done. Whatever needs to be done to bring jobs back, whatever needs to be done to put more money in your pocket, whatever needs to be done to ensure your religious and political views can be protected, it can be done, and we don't have to be concerned anymore about this process that has eroded the confidence of the majority of the American people. You know, for me personally, the reason this podcast was created, I used to do Fanboy Frenzy, all these game reviews and all this stuff, but then I started to realize, quite frankly, that stuff to me is a waste when the city's on fire. For any of you out there that ever had a Nintendo and you ever played Ninja Gaiden, or Gaiden, whatever freak you want to call it, the bottom line is the freaking video game cover is like one of the most iconic covers ever. You got Ryu Hayabusa standing on the front, he's kneeling, he looks dope, but the city's on fire, right? That's the way I imagine if I continue to do Fanboy Frenzy, we can make it look sweet, we can do big things and do big business. But the bottom line is it's going to take time. Time that I don't want to take away from what's really going on in the world today. And the fact is, the world is looking for people, younger people that can stand up and stand for principles, because right now in America, our moral code is so off center that it absolutely is making it where we can't find commonality. Now, granted, I blame politicians for that. I blame the media for that. I don't blame you nor I, because we're not the one that created this matrix-like state of, I guess you could say, falsehood that's around us, you know, that puts out all this garbage. Like you've all seen the meme that had Donald Trump, and I guess it was from Time Magazine, and they quoted him saying, well, you know, if I was going to run, I would run a Republican because they're just dumb idiots or something like that. That circled around many of my liberal friends. They shared it. But yet, if you go back and do any research whatsoever, you'll find out that is not a legitimate quote. But the bottom line is what's destroying our nation, what's destroying our city. If you play Fallout, look at what's become of those cities because of atomic warfare. Well, I'm telling you right now, we have atomic warfare of sorts, but it's all based on intelligent atomic warfare. It's all based on ideological lines, if you will. Or it's basically built on the fact of, we have a precipice before us, every single one of us, that we have to make a decision what we're going to be. Either we're going to be this beautiful city on a hill that the founding fathers expected us to be and hoped we would stay, or we're going to end up like what do you want to say? I guess we'll say like Rapture or like Columbia, a utopia gone wrong where everybody's gone mad and we've played God for so long that we have literally made creations that are coming back to destroy us. And the problem is, I think we've made creations, we've made huge, huge idols out of so many stars in entertainment and even our politicians, that we actually are letting those people turn us against each other and destroy us. To me, it's a great metaphor, folks, and I think all of us need to take note. You know, this is something that's going to be going on a lot with 8-bit politics. We want to talk about this multiple times a week and get some information out there, because the bottom line is this: I'm a firm believer that entertainment and intelligence come together. That's why I used to have a podcast called Intelligence, the crossroad of entertainment and intelligence. And the reason I did it is because I know that gamers and fans of pop culture, even though we put ourselves in these comic books and cartoons and video games, even though we devote a lot of time to that and study, I mean, it's an important part of a lot of our lives. The bottom line is, a lot of us also are educated and understand what's before us. But I think now I'm noticing an increasing trend of more people beginning to learn their history. And to me, that means there's hope for this here United States. But remember, I can't let the episode go without talking about someone who made the list. Jericho's list, in fact. Well, we're co-opting it. Maybe sometime down the road we'll have a nice little sound effect so you can hear us writing on our proverbial notepad. But I think this week's list acceptance will be for Miley Cyrus. Can you believe? First of all, let me back up and say that I pray for leadership. Okay, I pray for people, even like Hillary Clinton. You know, I pray that, I'm sure she got humbled. I would assume she did. I pray that God can come into her life and hopefully, you know, build her up. You know, bring some peace to her in the midst of a trying time. But for me to cry over the fact that she didn't win the presidency, if you go look at Miley Cyrus's video, this girl is crying. Let me ask you a question. Do you cry over babies that are aborted by the thousands per day? Do you cry over the fact that we have children overseas that are being blown up by bombs because you got terrorists hiding in mosques or hiding in hospitals but won't come out and fight like men? Are you crying at the fact that we have homeless people right here in the United States of America that are dying of starvation? All the while you have basketball players making $20 million a year. Are you crying about things that are true injustices? Because I'm pretty sure that the $20, $30 million made Hillary Clinton, that's not anything to be crying about. If you should be crying about anything, you should cry about the fact that a Democrat can rarely ever make a legitimate case without using the word homophobe, sexist, or racist. Cry about that because that's a lack of intelligence. And unfortunately, it comes from both sides. It's called low information voters. And the bottom line is, folks, you don't want to be a Koopa Troopa. They were low information. If you're going to be anybody, be a Bowser, okay? But just make sure you come to the game armed with some mental ammunition, if you will. Well, everybody, I appreciate you guys giving me a little over 20 minutes of your time. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Here pretty soon, you'll be able to find us on Stitcher and on iTunes. We hope to get those things up running in the next month or so. And obviously, you'll be able to download this for free every week on mixcloud.com/8bit politics. Thank you so much. And until next time, see ya.